God says, "My child, stop whatever you are doing for a moment and listen carefully, because there is something your heart needs to understand right now." The person you love has been carrying emotions, thoughts, questions, and feelings that they have not been able to express openly. Something has happened that changed the way they are looking at you, at themselves, and at the connection between you. This is why this message is reaching you now. You may have been confused by their silence. You may have wondered why they suddenly became distant, why their behavior changed, why they stopped saying what they used to say, or why they seemed to move on so easily. But what you saw on the outside was never the entire story. Behind that silence, there has been a battle taking place inside their heart. There is a reason you felt drawn to this message. Maybe you were simply scrolling and this title caught your attention. Maybe you almost ignored it but something made you stop. Maybe you have been thinking about this person for days, weeks, or even months. Perhaps you have been asking yourself whether they still remember you, whether they regret what happened, whether they secretly miss you, or whether there is still something unfinished between you. And today, you are being reminded not to make a final judgment based only on what you can see. Something has changed. The person you love may have recently experienced a moment that forced them to think about you differently. It may have been a conversation. It may have been something they saw. It may have been a memory that suddenly returned. It may have been hearing your name unexpectedly. It may have been discovering something about your life. It may even have been the simple realization that you are no longer waiting for them in the same way you once were. Whatever happened, it touched something deep inside them. They may have tried to ignore it at first. They may have told themselves, "It doesn't matter anymore." They may have tried to continue with their normal routine. They may have distracted themselves with work, friends, responsibilities, entertainment, or other people. But then the thoughts came back. And this time, they were harder to silence. They remembered you. They remembered your voice. They remembered your kindness. They remembered the conversations that lasted longer than expected. They remembered the moments when they felt safe enough to tell you things they could not tell anyone else. They remembered the little things that seemed unimportant at the time but became meaningful later. They remembered how you cared. And suddenly, they began asking themselves questions they had avoided for a long time. Did I make a mistake? Did I push away someone who genuinely loved me? Why am I still thinking about them? Why does their absence still affect me? Why do I still want to talk to them? And perhaps the biggest question of all. Is it too late? That question may be sitting heavily on their heart. Because sometimes people do not understand the value of something while they have it. Sometimes familiarity makes people careless. Sometimes pride makes people silent. Sometimes fear makes people run away from the very person they want to be close to. And sometimes people believe they have unlimited time to fix things. Until suddenly, they realize they do not. The person you love may now be realizing that time has moved forward. You have changed. Your life has changed. Your emotions have changed. Your expectations have changed. And they can no longer assume that you will always be standing in the same place, waiting for them to make a decision. This realization may have shaken them. They may have looked at your life from a distance and realized that you are becoming stronger without them. Maybe they expected you to keep chasing. Maybe they expected you to keep asking questions. Maybe they expected you to send another message. Maybe they thought you would eventually come back, no matter what happened. But you stopped. And your silence spoke louder than any message could have. Your silence told them that something inside you had changed. You were tired of guessing. Tired of waiting. Tired of wondering. Tired of being the only person trying to understand what was happening. And that is when they may have realized that losing access to you was not just a temporary situation. It could become permanent. God says, "My child, do not confuse silence with absence of feeling." Sometimes a person becomes silent because they are fighting a battle within themselves. But remember this, feelings alone are not enough. If someone truly wants to return to your life, they must eventually turn those feelings into honest action. That part is important. This message is not telling you to chase this person. It is not telling you to send dozens of messages. It is not telling you to beg for an explanation. It is not telling you to put your life on hold. Your heart may still love them, but you should never have to abandon yourself to prove that love. If they miss you, let them communicate. If they regret something, let them apologize. If they want another chance, let them show effort. If they claim they have changed, let time prove it. Because words can be beautiful, but consistency is what creates trust. Maybe this person has already started preparing themselves to contact you. They may have typed a message and deleted it. They may have opened your conversation and stared at your name. They may have wondered whether you would respond. They may have written something simple like, "How are you?" Then deleted it because that sentence felt too small for everything they actually wanted to say. They may want to say more. They may want to explain why they disappeared. They may want to tell you what was happening inside their mind. They may want to admit that they were scared. They may want to tell you that they were confused. They may want to say that they never stopped caring. But fear is holding them back. Fear of rejection. Fear of embarrassment. Fear that you will not believe them. Fear that you have already moved on. Fear that you will tell them they had their chance and wasted it. And perhaps that is why something huge happened recently. They were forced to confront the possibility that you may actually be gone from their life. Not temporarily. Not for a few weeks. But permanently. That thought can change a person. Imagine believing that someone will always be available, and then suddenly realizing that they are building a life that does not depend on you. That realization can hurt. It can make someone remember everything they once ignored. And maybe that is what happened. Maybe they saw something that reminded them how much you have changed. Maybe they noticed that you are happier. Maybe someone told them that you are doing well. Maybe they saw that you are no longer reacting to their absence. And suddenly, they realized. You know what? They really might move on. That thought may have created urgency. Not because you need to manipulate them. Not because you need to make them jealous. But because people sometimes understand the value of a connection when they realize it is no longer guaranteed. The person you love may now be looking back at the relationship with different eyes. They may remember moments when you needed them and they were unavailable. They may remember times when you tried to communicate and they avoided the conversation. They may remember moments when their pride mattered more than your feelings. They may remember promises they made and failed to keep. And perhaps they now regret those choices. They may be realizing that you were not asking for something impossible. You were asking for basic emotional honesty. You wanted consistency. You wanted communication. You wanted reassurance. You wanted to feel chosen. You wanted to know where you stood. And maybe they could not give you that before. But now they understand why you eventually became tired. This is where the story can change. Not because the past suddenly disappears. It does not. What happened still happened. But people can grow. People can become more honest. People can recognize their mistakes. People can learn from painful experiences. The question is not whether they regret losing you. The real question is whether they are willing to become the kind of person who can build something healthier with you. That is something only their actions can answer. So if they come back, do not rush. Listen. Observe. Let them speak. But also pay attention to what they do. Do they take responsibility? Do they acknowledge your pain? Do they avoid blaming you? Do they respect your boundaries? Do they communicate consistently? Do they make an effort even when it is inconvenient? Do they understand that trust cannot be rebuilt overnight? Those things matter more than emotional promises. God says, "My child, I am not asking you to close your heart. I am asking you to open your eyes. Love with wisdom. Forgive when forgiveness is deserved, but do not confuse forgiveness with allowing the same wound to happen again." That is the message you need to carry. Because perhaps you have been waiting for this person to realize something. Maybe you wanted them to understand how much you cared. Maybe you wanted them to realize that you were serious. Maybe you wanted them to see that your love was not temporary. Maybe you wanted them to understand that you were willing to stand beside them through difficult times. And perhaps now they are finally seeing it. Maybe not because you explained it again. Maybe because your absence explained it for you. Sometimes people understand your importance when they can no longer reach you as easily. They realize the conversations are gone. The familiar presence is gone. The person who used to ask how they were doing is no longer asking. The person who used to notice small changes in their mood is no longer there. The person who used to celebrate their victories is no longer standing beside them. And eventually, that absence becomes louder than the presence ever was. They begin to miss the little things. They miss the good morning messages. They miss your random questions. They miss your sense of humor. They miss the way you could understand their mood without needing a long explanation. They miss knowing that someone genuinely cared. And that is when missing someone becomes something deeper. It becomes recognition. Recognition of value. Recognition of connection. Recognition of what they allowed to slip away. Maybe this person has recently had a conversation with someone close to them. Maybe they finally admitted that they still care about you. Maybe someone asked them directly, "Do you still love them?" And for the first time, they could not lie. Maybe they stayed quiet. Maybe their expression changed. Maybe they avoided answering. But inside, they knew. That question reached a place they had been avoiding. And perhaps that was the huge thing. They finally admitted the truth to themselves. They still have feelings. They still wonder. They still care. They still want to know whether there is a chance. But there is another side to this. They may also be afraid that you no longer feel the same. They may wonder whether your heart has healed. They may wonder whether someone else has entered your life. They may wonder whether you would even recognize the person they are becoming. And this fear may be causing them to hesitate. They may be waiting for some sign that it is safe to approach you. But remember, you do not need to create that sign. You do not need to post something specifically for them. You do not need to pretend you are with someone else. You do not need to make them jealous. You do not need to play games. If they truly want to speak to you, they need to find the courage to communicate. Real love does not need manipulation. Real love requires honesty. And if this person is truly serious now, they will eventually understand that. Maybe the next conversation between you will be different. Maybe there will be an apology. Maybe there will be an explanation. Maybe there will be tears. Maybe there will be silence at first because both of you are trying to understand what to say. But if that moment comes, remember how far you have come. You are not the same person who once waited desperately for an answer. You have learned. You have grown. You have survived the uncertainty. You have discovered that you can live without constant reassurance from another person. And that makes your position different. You are not asking them to save you. You are not asking them to complete you. You are asking whether they can walk beside you. That is a completely different kind of love. God says, you were never created to beg for love. You were created to experience love that is willing, honest, and mutual. If someone returns, let them return with clarity. If they speak, let their words be supported by action. If they ask for another chance, let them understand that a second chance is not a return to the old pattern. It is an opportunity to create something better. That is why you should not be afraid of what happens next. If this person returns sincerely, you will have the opportunity to decide what you want. If they do not return, you will still continue growing. Either way, you are not losing yourself. And perhaps this is the lesson that has been developing through everything you have experienced. You cannot control another person's choices. You cannot control when they realize something. You cannot control when they become ready. You cannot control whether they reach out. But you can control how you respond. You can choose peace. You can choose dignity. You can choose patience. You can choose boundaries. You can choose to love without losing yourself. And maybe that is exactly what they are beginning to notice about you. You are not chasing anymore. You are not begging anymore. You are not trying to convince them anymore. You are simply living. And your calmness may be making them think more deeply than your previous efforts ever did. Because when someone knows you are always trying to keep the connection alive, they may never understand how much energy you were giving. But when you stop, they suddenly feel the difference. They notice the quiet. They notice the space. They notice that the relationship no longer revolves around their choices. And that can create a powerful realization. Maybe they now understand that you were not asking for too much. Maybe you were simply asking the wrong person at the wrong time. And perhaps now the timing is different. But timing alone is not enough. Both people must be ready. Both people must be willing. Both people must choose each other. So if you are watching this and thinking, could this really be about my person? Remember that the message is not a guarantee of a specific outcome. It is an invitation to pay attention. Pay attention to what happens next. Pay attention to your own feelings. Pay attention to their behavior if they appear again. And most importantly, pay attention to whether the connection brings peace or confusion. A healthy connection should not constantly make you question your worth. It should not make you feel like you have to compete for attention. It should not make you feel invisible. It should not make you afraid to express your needs. Love can be complicated, but it should not require you to destroy your peace. If this person truly wants another chance, they will need to understand that. They will need to approach you differently. They will need to communicate differently. They will need to treat your heart differently. And perhaps they are finally ready to do that. Maybe something happened that woke them up. Maybe someone gave them advice. Maybe they experienced a disappointment that made them understand what genuine love actually feels like. Maybe they lost something else and suddenly realized that what they had with you was rare. Maybe they watched another relationship fall apart because of the same mistakes they once made. Maybe they finally saw their own behavior from the outside. Whatever the reason, the realization is important. Because self-awareness is where change begins. They may be thinking about all the moments when you tried to reach them. All the times you waited. All the times you gave them another opportunity. And they may now be asking themselves why they did not appreciate it sooner. That regret may be heavy. But regret can become useful if it produces responsibility. If it only produces sadness, nothing changes. If it produces action, everything can change. So do not focus only on whether they miss you. Ask whether they are willing to act differently. That is the real question. Perhaps they are already preparing for a conversation. Perhaps they are deciding what they want to say. Perhaps they are trying to find the right moment. And maybe the reason they have not spoken yet is because they know that this time, they cannot simply send a casual message and pretend nothing happened. They know there are questions. They know there are wounds. They know there are things that need to be explained. And they know you deserve honesty. That may be why they are taking their time. They may be afraid of facing you because facing you means facing themselves. And that can be difficult. Because when they look at you, they may see a reflection of the person they were. They may remember who they were when they had your trust. They may remember how they treated that trust. And they may wish they could go back. But the past cannot be rewritten. It can only be learned from. So if they return, let the future be the focus. Not endless punishment. Not endless blame. But also not pretending nothing happened. Healing requires truth. If there was pain, acknowledge it. If there was betrayal, acknowledge it. If there was confusion, acknowledge it. If there were mistakes, acknowledge them. Then decide whether the two of you can build differently. And if you cannot, it is okay. Sometimes two people can love each other and still not be capable of creating a healthy relationship together. That does not make the love meaningless. It simply means love alone is not enough. Compatibility matters. Timing matters. Communication matters. Character matters. Consistency matters. And your peace matters. God says, "My child, do not be afraid of the outcome. I know what you cannot see. I know the conversations happening behind closed doors. I know the thoughts hidden behind silence. But your responsibility is not to control another heart. Your responsibility is to keep your own heart aligned with truth. So do not spend tonight imagining every possible scenario. Do not check your phone every few minutes. Do not interpret every small coincidence. Do not let anxiety become your guide. Instead, breathe. Trust yourself. Trust that whatever happens, you will handle it. If the message comes, you will read it. If the call comes, you will answer when you are ready. If the apology comes, you will decide whether it feels genuine. If the person returns, you will decide whether their presence belongs in your future. And if nothing happens, you will continue walking. That is strength. Not pretending you do not care. But caring without losing yourself. Maybe this person is urging you to read this because they are emotionally overwhelmed. Maybe they have finally reached a point where their feelings cannot be ignored. Maybe they are remembering how much you meant to them. Maybe they are realizing that their pride cost them something valuable. Maybe they are beginning to understand that you were not their enemy. You were someone who wanted to love them. And perhaps that realization is painful. Because sometimes we push away the person who is trying to love us because we are afraid of being vulnerable. Then, when they stop trying, we suddenly realize what we lost. Maybe that is what happened here. Maybe they were protecting themselves from love. Maybe they thought distance would make things easier. But distance did not erase the connection. It only made them aware of it. And now, they may be wondering whether there is still a door open. If there is, they will need to approach it respectfully. They cannot demand entry. They cannot expect everything to return to normal immediately. They must understand that trust is earned. And if they are willing to do that, perhaps the future holds a beautiful conversation. Maybe not a dramatic reunion. Maybe something quieter. A sincere message. A genuine apology. A conversation where both of you finally say the things you were too afraid to say before. Maybe you will discover that both of you were carrying pain. Maybe you will realize that you misunderstood each other. Maybe you will finally understand why certain things happened. And perhaps you will laugh about something that once caused you pain. Life can be strange like that. Sometimes the hardest chapter becomes the foundation for the most meaningful one. But do not force the ending. Let it unfold. The person you love may be closer to making a decision than you realize. They may be closer to contacting you. They may be closer to admitting the truth. But until that happens, keep your life moving. Do not wait beside a closed door. Keep living. Keep working. Keep growing. Keep becoming the person you are proud to be. Because if they return, they should meet the version of you who has grown. And if they do not, you will still have become stronger. Either way, your growth is never wasted. Perhaps that is why this message feels urgent. Not because you need to panic, but because you need to wake up. Wake up to your own value. Wake up to the possibility that this person may still care. But also wake up to the reality that care must become action. Wake up to the fact that you deserve clarity. Wake up to the fact that you can love someone without chasing them. Wake up to the fact that your future is not controlled by their hesitation. And wake up to the fact that sometimes the biggest miracle is not getting the person back. Sometimes the biggest miracle is getting yourself back. Maybe you lost yourself trying to understand them. Maybe you spent too much time wondering what you did wrong. Maybe you blamed yourself for their choices. Maybe you thought you were not enough. But hear this clearly. You were never required to become someone else to deserve genuine love. You were never required to be perfect. You were never required to tolerate disrespect. You were never required to beg someone to stay. You deserve someone who chooses you willingly. Someone who communicates. Someone who values your presence. Someone who does not make you constantly question where you stand. If this person can become that person, perhaps there is something worth exploring. If they cannot, then your path continues. And there is no shame in that. Now imagine the moment they finally decide to reach out. Maybe their hands shake. Maybe they type the first sentence. Maybe they stare at the screen. Maybe they wonder whether to press send. They may rewrite the message several times. Because this is not just another conversation. They know there is history between you. They know there are emotions. They know that one message could open a door they have been afraid to approach. And finally, perhaps they send it. Maybe it simply says, "I need to talk to you." Those 5 words may carry months of emotion. Maybe they say, "I have been thinking about everything." Maybe they say, "I owe you an apology." Maybe they say, "I never stopped caring." Maybe they say, "I was wrong." Whatever words they use, remember that you do not have to respond immediately. Take your time. Read carefully. Feel what you feel. Then decide from a place of peace. Do not respond because you are afraid of losing them. Respond because you know what you want. That difference is powerful. If you still love them, you can say so. If you are hurt, you can say so. If you need time, you can say so. If you want another chance, you can say so. If you do not, you can say so. Your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. Your heart matters. And perhaps this person is finally ready to understand that. The huge event may have been the realization that you are not someone they can take for granted. They may have finally understood that your patience was not endless. Your love was not a guarantee. Your presence was a gift. And gifts can be lost when they are not appreciated. This realization may be painful for them. But pain can become a teacher. Perhaps they are learning. Perhaps they are changing. Perhaps they are becoming more emotionally honest. And if that is true, time will show it. You do not have to believe everything immediately. You do not have to reject everything immediately either. Simply observe. Let action speak. Let consistency speak. Let character speak. And let your intuition be balanced by reality. God says, "My child, the next chapter will not require you to chase. What is genuine will move toward clarity. What is temporary will fade. Do not fear either outcome. You are being guided toward what brings peace. So if you have been waiting for a sign, perhaps this is your sign to stop waiting passively and start living actively. Your life is happening now. Do not postpone your happiness. Do not stop your growth. Do not refuse opportunities because you are hoping someone might return. If they return, they can meet you while you are living. You do not need to stand still. You do not need to keep the same version of yourself alive for someone who left. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to become happier. And maybe that is exactly what makes this next chapter so powerful. If they return, they will not be returning to the same person. They will be meeting someone who has learned the value of peace. Someone who understands boundaries. Someone who knows that love should not be one-sided. Someone who can love deeply without becoming dependent. Someone who can forgive without forgetting the lessons. Someone who can say, I still care about you, but I need to see consistency. That is not cold. That is mature. And if they truly care, they will respect it. So remember the title of this message. The person you love is urging you to read this immediately because something huge just happened. Maybe they finally realized what you meant. Maybe they finally felt your absence. Maybe they finally admitted their feelings. Maybe they finally recognized their mistakes. Maybe they finally understood that you could move on. Maybe they finally decided that silence was no longer protecting them. Something has shifted. But now the next move must be real. Not imaginary. Not based on signs alone. Not based on assumptions. Real. A real message. A real conversation. A real apology. A real effort. A real change. That is what you should look for. And if it comes, you will know. You will not have to decode every word. You will not have to guess. You will not have to beg. Clarity will feel different. Consistency will feel different. Peace will feel different. And perhaps that is the biggest transformation waiting for you. Not simply getting someone back, but experiencing love without losing yourself. So tonight, release the pressure. Release the need to know exactly when. Release the need to know exactly how. You do not need every answer right now. You only need enough courage to keep moving. If they are meant to speak, they will find their courage. If they are meant to return, they will have to take steps. If they are meant to stay, they will have to prove that through consistency. And if they are not, something else will unfold. Either way, you are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not behind. Your story is not over. God says, my child, I know the desires you carry quietly. I know the name that sometimes crosses your mind when the world becomes silent. I know the questions you have asked without receiving answers. But trust that clarity is coming. Do not force it. Do not chase it. Allow truth to reveal itself. And when it does, have the courage to accept what you see. Maybe the person you love has been afraid to admit how deeply they still care. Maybe they have been pretending to be unaffected. Maybe they have been trying to convince everyone, including themselves, that they are fine. But something happened. Something broke through that wall. And now they cannot look at the connection the same way. They may be remembering. They may be regretting. They may be hoping. They may be preparing. But while they are doing that, you have a decision too. Will you continue being controlled by uncertainty? Or will you choose peace? Choose peace. Will you continue questioning your worth? Or will you recognize it? Recognize it. Will you continue waiting for someone to choose you? Or will you choose yourself? Choose yourself. And if they return, let them meet the person who chose themselves first. That is the person who can build a healthy relationship. That is the person who can love without fear. That is the person who can say yes without desperation and no without guilt. That is the person who can recognize genuine love when it appears. Perhaps this huge event is only the beginning. Maybe the next few days or weeks will bring a conversation you never expected. Maybe you will receive a message at a strange time. Maybe someone will finally tell you what they have been hiding. Maybe an old misunderstanding will finally be cleared. Maybe you will finally hear the words you once waited so desperately to hear. Or maybe the biggest change will happen inside you. Maybe you will wake up one morning and realize that you are no longer afraid of losing them. Maybe you will realize that you can love them and still be okay without them. Maybe you will realize that your happiness cannot depend on another person's readiness. That is freedom. And once you reach that place, everything becomes clearer. If they return, you can choose from strength. If they stay away, you can continue from strength. Nothing can take that strength away from you. So do not be afraid of what happens next. The person you love may indeed have something important to say. They may be closer to reaching out than you think. They may be carrying regret. They may be carrying hope. They may be carrying a realization that has completely changed their perspective. But you do not need to chase the revelation. Let them reveal it. Let them speak. Let them act. Let them prove. And while they decide what they want, you decide what you deserve. You deserve honesty. You deserve effort. You deserve respect. You deserve peace. You deserve someone who does not make you feel like loving them is a constant test. And if this person can offer that now, perhaps the story is not finished. Perhaps the huge thing that happened was not the end. Perhaps it was the awakening. The moment they finally realized what was standing in front of them. The moment they understood that some connections cannot be replaced by temporary distractions. The moment they realized that your presence had become part of their emotional world. The moment they finally understood that losing you was not as easy as they imagined. And perhaps they are now standing at a crossroads. One direction leads back to old habits. The other leads toward honesty. If they choose honesty, everything can change. But remember, you cannot choose for them. They must choose. And your role is not to force their decision. Your role is to protect your peace while remaining open to truth. So breathe. Put down the fear. Stop replaying every old conversation. Stop blaming yourself. Stop wondering whether you were enough. You were enough. The issue was never simply your worth. Sometimes people are not ready to receive what they asked for. Sometimes they are afraid of what genuine love requires. Sometimes they need to lose something before they understand its value. And maybe this person is finally understanding. If they are, you will see it. Not because of a coincidence. Not because of a prediction. But because their behavior will change. They will communicate. They will show up. They will make effort. They will respect you. They will listen. They will take responsibility. They will stop making you guess. That is the evidence your heart deserves. And until then, keep living. Keep smiling. Keep growing. Keep building your future. Do not let uncertainty steal today's happiness. Because whether this person returns or not, your life has meaning. Your future has possibility. Your heart can heal. Your life can become beautiful. And perhaps one day, you will look back at this period and understand why everything had to happen the way it did. Maybe the person returns and you build something stronger. Maybe they return and you realize you have outgrown the relationship. Maybe they never return and someone else enters your life with the clarity you always wanted. You cannot know the entire story yet. And that is okay. You only need to live the chapter you are currently in. God says, "My child, do not fear the unknown." The unknown is not empty. It is where new possibilities are born. Keep walking. Keep your heart wise. Keep your standard strong. Let love come to you through action, not confusion. So if this message touched something inside you, remember the most important part. Something huge may have happened in the heart of the person you love. But something huge is happening in you too. You are learning to love without losing yourself. You are learning to hope without becoming dependent. You are learning to forgive without abandoning your boundaries. You are learning to recognize the difference between words and actions. You are learning that your worth does not depend on whether one person chooses you. And that lesson will serve you for the rest of your life. If they come back, welcome the conversation if you genuinely want it. If they apologize, listen. If they ask for another chance, think carefully. If they show consistent effort, allow time to reveal whether it is real. But never forget yourself again. Do not return to the old version of the relationship simply because you missed the person. Build something new or do not rebuild at all. That is the difference between repeating the past and creating a future. Maybe this person is finally ready. Maybe they have finally grown. Maybe they have finally understood. And if they have, they will not expect you to forget everything overnight. They will be patient. They will understand. They will show you. Because someone who genuinely wants another chance will not only ask for your heart. They will take care of it. That is the standard. That is the lesson. That is the new beginning. So, before you leave, remember this. The person you love may be thinking about you more than they admit. They may be carrying words they have not spoken. They may be replaying memories they thought they had forgotten. They may be regretting decisions they once believed were right. They may be realizing that you were more important than they understood. And something may have happened recently that finally forced them to face that truth. But your story does not depend on whether they act immediately. Your story continues. Your life continues. Your healing continues. Your future continues. And if their path truly belongs beside yours, they will eventually have to walk toward you with honesty. You will not have to drag them. You will not have to chase them. You will not have to convince them. They will come with clarity. And when they do, you will be ready, not because you have waited helplessly, but because you have grown. You will be able to look at them and say, I cared about you. I still care. But this time, I need something real. And if they can give you that, perhaps a new chapter can begin. Not the old chapter. A new one. One where both people communicate. Both people listen. Both people make effort. Both people choose. Both people grow. And if they cannot give you that, then let them go with peace. Because you are not meant to spend your life trying to convince someone of your value. The right love will recognize it. The right person will respect it. The right connection will not require you to disappear inside it. So keep your heart open. Keep your mind clear. Keep your standard strong. And let what happens next happen naturally. Maybe the message you have been waiting for is closer than you think. Maybe the person you love is finally gathering courage. Maybe the huge realization has already happened. Maybe the silence is about to break. But whatever comes next, remember. You do not need to be afraid. You do not need to chase. You do not need to prove. You do not need to beg. You simply need to be honest with yourself. If love returns with truth, meet it with truth. If love returns with effort, meet it with openness. If love returns with the same old confusion, protect your peace. And if love does not return, trust that your life still has beautiful chapters waiting. God says, my child, what is meant to teach you will not destroy you. What is meant to strengthen you will not leave you empty. What is meant to stay will learn how to stay. And what is meant to leave will eventually make room for something that can meet you with greater honesty. So take one final deep breath. Let your shoulders relax. Release the fear of not knowing. You do not need to know everything tonight. You only need to remember who you are. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of respect. You are worthy of consistency. You are worthy of peace. And you are worthy of being chosen without having to beg. The person you love may be thinking about you. They may be missing you. They may regret what happened. They may be preparing to speak. Something huge may have happened in their heart. But the next chapter will be decided not by emotion alone, but by action. Let them show you. Let time reveal them. Let truth become clear. And while that happens, keep moving forward. Because perhaps the greatest surprise waiting for you is not simply that the person you love comes back. Perhaps it is that when they finally do, you realize you have become strong enough to choose wisely. You can choose love without fear. You can choose reconciliation without desperation. You can choose distance without hatred. You can choose yourself without guilt. And that is the real transformation. So if your heart has been waiting for a message, stay calm. If your mind has been searching for answers, breathe. If you still love this person, honor that feeling without allowing it to control your life. And if they truly have something huge to say, give them the opportunity to find the courage to say it. You do not need to speak for them. You do not need to chase them. You do not need to create the moment. Let them create it. Because this time, the person who wants to return should be the person willing to take the first honest step. And when that step comes, you will know what to do. Not because someone predicted it. Not because a sign told you. But because your heart and your wisdom will work together. That is where real clarity begins. That is where real love begins. And perhaps, after everything you have been through, that is exactly what this message was meant to remind you of. Something huge happened. Maybe in their heart. Maybe in their circumstances. Maybe in their understanding. Maybe in yours. But the story is still unfolding. The silence does not have to be the ending. The distance does not have to be permanent. The past does not have to control the future. But the future must be built differently. If they return, let them return with honesty. If they speak, let them speak with sincerity. If they promise, let them prove it. If they love you, let that love become visible through their actions. And if they cannot, then keep walking without shame. Because you are not losing love by refusing to accept confusion. You are protecting your heart until something genuine arrives. So remember these words when you feel tempted to chase. You do not have to chase what is willing to meet you. You do not have to convince what already understands. You do not have to beg someone who truly wants to stay. Real love walks toward you too. Real love communicates. Real love takes responsibility. Real love learns. Real love grows. Real love chooses. And perhaps the person you love is finally learning exactly that. Maybe something happened that changed everything. Maybe they finally woke up. Maybe they finally realized. Maybe they finally understood. Maybe they finally decided that losing you was not something they could simply accept. If that is true, the next chapter will reveal itself. And when it does, remember who you became while waiting. Remember the strength you discovered. Remember the peace you built. Remember the boundaries you learned. Remember the value you finally recognized. Never give those things away again. Love them if you choose. Forgive them if you can. Listen to them if they return. But never forget yourself. Because the greatest love story is not the one where someone finally comes back. It is the one where two people meet each other with honesty, respect, courage, and genuine effort. And if that person can meet you there, perhaps this is not the end. Perhaps this is the beginning of something completely different. something mature, something peaceful, something real. So stay calm. Stay hopeful, but stay grounded. Keep living your life. Keep becoming stronger. And let the next move come naturally. The person you love may have something important to tell you. Something huge may have happened. Something may have changed. And if their heart is truly urging them to reach you, eventually their courage will have to become action. Until then, trust yourself. Trust your growth. Trust your ability to handle whatever comes. Because no matter what happens next, you are not the person you were before. You are wiser now. Stronger now. More aware now. And ready for a love that does not leave you constantly wondering where you stand. That is the message. That is the warning. That is the hope. And perhaps, more than anything else, that is the new beginning. The person you love may finally be realizing what they lost. But now it is your turn to realize what you deserve. And once you do, everything changes.